What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show. It is week 22. I'm joined with Raphielle Johnson and Noah Rubin. We're in the fantasy playoffs. Most fantasy leagues should be ending this week. So we're going to run through all of the headlines, the pickups you need to make to close out to potentially take home that fantasy championship, and then also discuss some Final Four stuff, as well as some looking ahead to next season. But got to start off the show, guys. I know we were all up late last night. First, it was Steph Curry going for 52. I thought he was going to drop a 50-point triple-double, potentially breaking Klay Thompson's record of 14 3-pointers in the game. He only finished with 12. But then after that, we get the Jokic masterclass. This is the first time in NBA history that two players on the same night have scored at least 50 points with 10 rebounds and 7 assists. Ridiculous basketball. Raph, what were you doing? Were you just in awe? Were you yelling at the TV screen when Russell Westbrook missed that layup? What were you doing?
Like Noah, we were both working. Noah had the actual game assignment, and I was working on the waiver column for the morning. But yeah, that was an interesting turn of events to end that game. Maybe he got caught in between a layup and a dunk. I can see the argument of fanning the ball out and running some more clock as well. But you got a wide open layup. I think the general assumption is that you're going to make it. And then you don't compound the error by fouling a jump shooter right before time expires. So rough ending for Russ. But in terms of the historic events we watched last night, that was some incredible basketball from both of those players. Steph had 32 at the half. 8 3-pointers at that point too. So it was like Memphis found something in the sense of defensive pride, but it really didn't matter just because, Jimmy Butler stepped up. Draymond Green stepped up during that fourth quarter as well. So they're now 19-4 with Jimmy Butler on the floor. So I, like many, laughed when Draymond Green said they're going to win a championship. I don't know if it's going to happen, but you look at the results, I don't know if we can argue that Jimmy Butler has been a massive upgrade for that team.
Yeah, I mean, Draymond once again just wrote a check that Steph has to cash, but it looks like he might actually they'll have a chance to do it, which is pretty cool. And obviously, Draymond is also a big part of that with his defensive presence. He might win Defensive Player of the Year, so he's a little bit of a factor there. I think with Steph, if he had a chance to break that record, I feel like you almost have to be strategic about when you get hot if you want to break that record, because hitting 8 threes in the first half, you're Steph Curry, you're going to the locker room, or Memphis is, and the message is do not let Steph get another 3 off. Now he hit 4 more, but it's like you haven't hit 8 in the first half. There's a little bit more of an emphasis on it. I feel like you have to get hot in the third quarter if you're really going to do it. But as far as Jokic, that performance was insane. Most points in a triple-double in NBA history. Third player with a 60-point triple-double in NBA history. But the end sequence, my jaw just kept dropping. Like Anthony Edwards, kind of a lazy turnover when he got double teamed. Then it's like a fast break layup. Oh, okay, they're going to go up 3. Russ misses the layup. My jaw drops further. They go down. Minnesota just wastes time. Like they could have tried to get a good look. Barely got that shot off. And then foul call, like my hands were on my head. My jaw was on the ground. Like it was just a wild, wild sequence to kind of a lame ending to a really, really good game. Just hate that it ended on free throws, even though it was definitely the right call. It's fine. But yeah, just a lot of crazy performances, kind of making up for the lack of excitement in all of March Madness. Dare I say it? I don't know.
I think, my thing with March Madness is I think the quality of basketball has actually been pretty good. It's just like you don't have those Cinderellas that are like, oh my God, how did this team make it? It's so improbable. I'm not mad at the change of pace. It just sucks for my bracket because I did not pick all ones to go to the end. But did last night's performance by Jokic change your opinion on MVP, or where do you stand on that?
I was already in the camp that said Jokic should have been MVP or should be MVP. I think the Thunder have a lot of incredible players, and SGA absolutely has a very strong case, one of the stronger cases for a player other than Jokic in the last 5 years. So if he wins, I'm not going to be upset. I mean, they'll have a chance to win 70 games. He's been spectacular. I'm more in the camp of Jokic, just looking at last night as an example. He's been as good as he has been, and Denver has been as good as they have been with injuries to a lot of core pieces. Like they didn't have Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. last night. Aaron Gordon's missed a lot of time. Russell Westbrook has played really well this season after a couple of really poor seasons. And we saw, kind of on display last night with everyone watching a lot of those plays that have kind of tainted Russ's image over the last few years. And Jokic still has them one of the top seeds in the West, and he's been playing incredible basketball. So I would lean Jokic, but it's one of those like battles that I'm not super passionate about, unlike pretty much every other award this cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, this feels like an MVP race where there really won't be too much of a beef with either one in terms of who wins it. In terms of SGA, as great as he's been and how great as the Thunder have been as a team, I think those were his arguments there. Because if they didn't have the distance that they have on the rest of the Western Conference, I think I'd probably lean more towards Jokic. But I think what Oklahoma City's done all year, that has to factor in a bit. But if Jokic were to win his 4th in 5 years, I'd have no problem with that either. Like Noah said, he's just been an absolute beast with all the injuries that they've had, and they're still in the mix, possibly being a 2 seed in the West. So, yeah, either one I think is going to be an outstanding choice to win that award this year.
Yeah, after hearing a lot of the Minnesota Timberwolves talk about Jokic's performance last night and the respect and the admiration that they have, like, this guy is just like the best, clearly the best player on the planet. But then you have other players that after SGA does whatever he does on a nightly basis, they're like, this guy's MVP. So this is definitely one of the tighter races we've seen. And I don't care either way that it goes. I think both are definitely deserving. Want to stick to the Timberwolves for a second because there was a melee. You may have seen it. Dante DiVincenzo put hands on Ryan Holland. Sorry.
Ron
Holland. Rollins, Ryan Rollins. All these silly season got me all confused with my names in here. So he got suspended for a game. Naz Reid did too. Dante made it back. They returned on Thursday. Where do you see Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Because he had a great streaming night last night. Based on the Timberwolves schedule, which is pretty favorable this week, Noah, is this someone you think you can hold through the remainder of the week, or is this pretty much, it was a nice stream for Naw while Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo were out with their suspensions?
Yeah, I think it was a one-game thing. I think the main factor there being the fact that he played 45 minutes, and obviously he played, I think, the entire time of both overtimes, if I remember correctly, but still would have had 35 minutes if this was just a regulation game. He's not going to play that much. Like, he's not going to see that significant of a workload for him to even have a chance of scoring 26 points again or adding in 8 more assists. Like, those things aren't what he's there to do. And he also had to take extra shots with both Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid out. Both those guys are back. They're going to want them to shoot before they want Nickeil Alexander-Walker to shoot. So he's having a fantastic season. He's an important reserve for them, but not a guy that I think is a must stream with them playing 2 games for the rest of this week, even if they are like pretty good matchups.
Yeah, I think that would be my one argument in his favor. Playing Brooklyn and Philadelphia, 2 teams that quite clearly don't want to win games, at least in terms of the front office. I think the players certainly want to, but you've seen the strength of those rosters or lack thereof. It's really difficult for them to beat playoff caliber opponents at this stage. So maybe this is an opportunity to get Anthony Edwards a couple extra minutes on the bench, to rest up for the playoffs. He's going to want to go full throttle no matter what, but I think the matchups are why Nickeil may still have some value in extremely deep leagues for the rest of this week. But that's only if you can't find someone with like 3 games left that can potentially help you out.
And the 3 games left, I think, is an interesting point, because if you look at the slates, you're looking at Sunday, that's 11 games. It's going to be very hard to fit in your bench guys on that slate because there's so many games. Same with Friday. And I think you could make the argument to hold Nickeil Alexander-Walker because they play on Thursday and Saturday, and those are both lighter slates. So if you want to hold and there's not a better option, I could see the case to be made for it. The other side of that brawl was the Detroit Pistons, where it seems like it's Detroit versus everybody. And I think it's I was talking to Vinny Goodwill on Yahoo like a couple weeks ago about how the NBA is better when Detroit is relevant. And I never even thought about it that way. But it's actually kind of true, because like when Rip Hamilton and Rasheed Wallace and Chauncey Billups had their moment, they were battling against the San Antonio Spurs, go back to the 90s in the Jordan era. It's definitely better when Detroit is more relevant. So now that Cade Cunningham has missed several games, Dennis Schroeder has somehow become fantasy relevant again. Where are you kind of looking at based off the suspensions, Raph? Is there anyone that you're kind of targeting from the Detroit Pistons now with Beef Stew clearly having some precedent there of his goonery working against him? He's going to be suspended for a couple games. But then also you have Marcus Sasser and Ron Holland that are also suspended.
I hate to throw the name Paul Reed out there, but it's kind of like 2 games. I think, what do they got? Yeah, they've got 3 games. So he'll miss games against Oklahoma City and Toronto. Paul Reed is a backup option. I don't think the minutes are going to be great just because you still have Jalen Durant there, but he's someone to consider in 18 to 20 minutes. Beyond that, I think you're kind of looking at the usual suspects. Like Malik Beasley's always going to be on the radar in terms of an addition. Do you roll the dice on Tim Hardaway Jr.? Like, he hasn't been a good fantasy option for most of the season, but he has played pretty well recently. So without Holland, maybe there's a little bit more for him to do offensively, get you a bit more production. But I don't know if there's anybody on that bench that I would really target outside of Malik Beasley, and we already know what he brings to the table.
Yeah, I agree with that. And obviously, if Dennis Schroeder is sitting on your waiver wire, I think he'll just see a few extra minutes with Sasser suspended for a game. Cade Cunningham doubtful. I think with the Paul Reed thing, he's played in 6 games without Isaiah Stewart this season. 16.5 minutes per game, average 6.2 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.8 steals, and 1.2 blocks is a little bit appealing there. But I think the fact that, like you said, Jalen Durant's still there. So Paul Reed will play the backup center minutes, but it's a pretty risky option to me to try and stream him in just because Isaiah Stewart's not going to be there. But I mean, he'll be better than he has been, but I don't know if that's enough for me to stream him in a 12-team league.
Yeah, it's a tough sell on Paul Reed for me. I'm just looking at their schedule. They got OKC tonight, not great. Toronto on Friday, but that's a 10-game slate. So I don't know if you're.
I mean, if OKC blows them out,
yeah.
Do you but do you guys actually pick up guys off of the thought of a potential blowout for like reserve role guys?
No.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to project that, right?
Yeah, you can't.
It was like I was half joking.
Yeah,
we can look back and Paul Reed plays 25, 30 minutes, and people are like, "Well, you said don't stream." I'm like, you can't bank on OKC winning by 40 every game and streaming in a player on the losing team just because of that.
I don't know. Detroit's scrappy, man. They just beat who did they just beat without their best player? Who did they just beat? Asar Thompson had a great game.
They beat Cleveland?
Cleveland. Yeah. It's Cleveland. Okay. That was the other name I was going to mention. If Asar Thompson's out there, I think he would be an obvious pickup. But yeah, the rest of their schedule, they do play Memphis on Saturday, which is a lighter, like only 5 games, so you could fit in Paul Reed there. But yeah, it's going to be tough for a lot of these fringe guys. This is a very interesting time for streaming. The desperation that seeps from all of us of some of the players we're picking up. Speaking of which, Kevin Durant is going to be missing pretty much the rest of the regular season with an ankle injury. We'll see if the Suns can make the play-in tournament. It doesn't look like it's heading that direction. So, Noah, are you picking up Grayson Allen, or is there someone else like Ryan Dunn pique your interest for fantasy purposes?
I mean, I like Ryan Dunn. I don't think he's been consistent enough this season. He's been very streaky with his production. But I think Grayson Allen is the very logical pickup here. Moved into the starting lineup for their last game, 23 points, 6 threes. He had a phenomenal 2023-24 season. And then Mike Budenholzer comes in and is like, I don't want to play you as much. So he just hasn't been able to kind of replicate that production from last season. But Mike Budenholzer's hand was forced basically to start Grayson Allen, and he took advantage of the opportunity. Hopefully he'll continue to see that type of role for the rest of the season. But basically until KD is back, I feel very comfortable streaming Grayson Allen. Hopefully a Royce O'Neal / Bradley Beal return doesn't just totally push Grayson Allen to the bench immediately. But that last game was enough for me to say, okay, I'll give Grayson Allen a shot.
Yeah, as long as O'Neal and Beal are out, I think Grayson Allen's going to be the logical play here. I know Colin Gillespie's been in the starting lineup, but He played well in Milwaukee, but I don't think I would trust him in terms of trying to win a fantasy matchup at this point in the season. So, yeah, I'm with Noah. I think it's just Grayson Allen. And then if Royce O'Neal gets back towards the end of the week, you can consider him as well because he can get you some 3-pointers and steals. But I think Grayson Allen would be my play.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking because whatever teams I have left scrapping here, I want no parts of the Suns the last 2 games of the year. They play on Friday, big double-digit slate. So same with Sunday, and it's at Boston and at New York. Like, I'm not starting Grayson Allen. I mean, maybe. I mean, if I need threes, I'll stream them. But outside of that, like, I'm like, who's really going to help me down the stretch here? It's just so hard to find the value. So that's why I've been trying to harp on. Find those lighter slates, man, because at least your guys will play. You don't have to make any tough decisions. Injuries. Jalen Brunson did give a positive outlook. At least he's going to be returning. Looks like he's nearing return. Sounds like he's progressing in his ankle injury. Deuce McBride is not. He was ruled out. He's been ruled out. So it looks like we're going to continue to roll here with DeLon Wright and Tyler Kolek. Raph, resident Nick expert. Do you trust either of these guys the rest of the way here?
In real life basketball, yes. In fantasy, no. I don't think I can stream either one of those guys with confidence at this stage. Wright has been playing about 30 minutes per game. Kolek's gotten the other 18, but you look at it, Wright's still well outside the top 100 over the past week. Kolek's outside the top 300. So even though he has a really impressive assist to turnover ratio, really haven't seen much from either of those guys. Wright had 12-4 and 4 with 3 steals last night. Pretty good line, but I don't think you can trust either of those guys, especially in this particular matchup. You're going up against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, so no.
I think maybe in a deeper format you could. DeLon Wright, he can get steals. He's a really good perimeter defender, and then he's been able to chip in a little bit here and there in other categories, but it's mostly for steals. And then Kolek, I don't think the minutes have been there enough for me to consider it, but in a deeper format, if you are desperate for assists, he's been able to give you a lot of those in limited action. So it'd be not a confident play there, but they do have the game on Saturday, which if I'm not mistaken is a lighter day. So that's a little bit of an advantage there, but overall not super enticing for either option. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think you're going to be grasping for straws. Like, I think it's more of like, do you need steals? Okay, maybe you could consider DeLon Wright or low end assists. Kolek is really the assist guy. But the New York schedule is interesting. They're on the second leg of a back-to-back tonight against Cleveland, and then they have a 2-game back-to-back against Atlanta and Phoenix to close out the week. So, desperation heaves. Just more desperation heaves. But I will say it's good that I don't know if this is a testament. I think it's just the injuries. Like, I don't think Tibbs would have ever given Tyler Kolek any minutes this season if Jalen Brunson didn't go down or Deuce McBride. But it's nice to see the rookie out there. And I think we're going to see a lot more rookies here. The free NBC Sports Now channel is your home for the NFL draft month with more than 100 hours of draft programming throughout April. Daily draft coverage includes PFT Live, The Dan Patrick Show, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, and Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Please tune in for the NFL Draft Ranking Specials with Connor Rogers and updated mock drafts premiering every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, go to NBCsports.com/now. We got some positive news for once out of Dallas. The bigs are getting healthy. We'll see if they can make the playoffs here, but Daniel Gafford coming back, 17 points, 7 rebounds. Nice to see. Derek Lively's been inching closer to a return. Anthony Davis is back, even though he's on a minutes restriction. He's looked positive. Noah, where do you stand on the triple big situation in Dallas here? If you see Anthony Davis, like I could see someone dropping Anthony Davis in the past, being like, oh, he's on a minutes restriction. I got to win a week. I got to get rid of him. Would you pick him up? Would you pick up Gafford if he's out there? Where do you kind of where do you stand on it?
I think it's just, first of all, interesting that all of them are back or going to be back with Lively on track to return this week. The fact that after some of these injuries happened, everybody was kind of ready to I think all of us included, we're just kind of ready to say, okay, like Dallas isn't going to be in the postseason this year. It's going to be like, the Suns are going to get that last spot. There's no reason for them to rush these guys back. And I don't know if, time will tell if they were rushed back at all, but they are a team that you're probably not going to enjoy playing in the postseason, even if, if they make it out of the play-in tournament, probably a team that loses in 5 or 6 in the first round, but plays hard every game. They have a really good defense with all these guys healthy. But obviously no Kyrie Irving really changes their chances of making any noise. But as far as what we could see over the next couple weeks, Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis. Even if he's still having his minutes limited, he's too good for me to not be excited about him just being on the floor, because he hasn't played well to this point, but at some point he's going to be Anthony Davis again. Both Gafford and Lively have been very successful fantasy players without playing a ton of minutes. That's kind of been a topic since since I guess Gafford got traded there and they were splitting time at center, is both these guys are able to make an impact in 20 minutes. And so I think Gafford played 19 minutes in the last game, restricted to 15 to 20. I'm assuming Lively will see something similar after almost 3 months off. But I think both guys can give you 7-8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a high field goal percentage in 15 to 20 minutes. So they'll have value. I don't think either will pop off for a monster game, but they're going to be solid.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You're probably hoping for top 100 value. You're probably going to end up a little bit behind that, but at this point in the season, I think that's fine if you're looking for bigs that are going to play about 18, 20 minutes per game. So if anything, we bid farewell to Kai Jones and thank him for his fantasy-related service these last few weeks. But, there's not going to be any room for him, unfortunately, because he's played pretty well when given the opportunity to start. But, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. If anybody dropped Anthony Davis, you don't walk to the waiver wire to pick him. You run, because even in limited minutes, he's, like Noah said, he's Anthony Davis. He's going to give you excellent value when he's on the court. So,
and Raph, and no, you can answer this too if you have any feelings towards it. What do you think that their returns does for Najee Marshall's role going forward?
I think he'll still be key, just because the ability to score and make plays for himself and others, especially when you look at, not just Kyrie being out. Brandon Williams his two-way expired, so he's not active anymore. They're going to need Najee Marshall. So his minutes may take a hit just because you have those 3 bigs back in the rotation, but I don't think it's going to be something to where fantasy managers should panic and drop him before this week ends.
Yeah, I think especially as of right now, time of recording, because they'll play again tonight, but they have 3 more games this week, including a back-to-back Friday, Saturday. So who knows what that availability is going to look like. I mean, Anthony Davis is going to miss one of those. Gafford will miss one of those. And then Lively may or may not play in one of those, kind of depending on what his return looks like. So that's at least one, I'm assuming, big game for Najee Marshall in there, because he's been really good when he started. So, yeah, I think he's still a guy I'm hanging on to, but some of these performances that he's had in the month of March, not really expecting anything like that consistently coming up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the back-to-backs. I doubt that they were going to push it with either of them. So at least you could get that value out of Najee Marshall. He's still been a good rebounder, and he's still seen a healthy dose of minutes. I just don't think the point expectation is probably going to go down with AD primarily being the dude now. Really curious to see how that. This is going to be the first time they're all healthy, so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of works out. But definitely an intimidating front court that you don't want to see. Well, I don't know about everybody else on the roster, but
right.
The Grizzlies are a hot mess. They fired Taylor Jenkins, after being the 5th seed in the Western Conference. They've been battling injuries from Desmond Bane to John Morant. Zach Edey's up and down rookie season. I guess where we stand now, based off what we saw last night against the Warriors in a tough loss. Noah, where do you stand from a fantasy standpoint of how this coaching switch may affect Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, or perhaps anybody else that may be fantasy relevant?
I think the main player that, at least so far, the very small 3-game sample size that has been impacted is John Morant. There was the reports that he was frustrated with the way the offense looked this year. I think that was pretty well reported. Not just one source saying that, but that I would hope is kind of the main factor in them deciding to move on from Taylor Jenkins just weeks before the playoffs start. The reaction I kind of saw from a lot of Memphis fans was, oh, okay, like this move was overdue. Like we were kind of happy Taylor Jenkins is gone, but regardless, to me, and I think everyone would agree, like the timing of it is just really weird. And they haven't responded the way you kind of hope a team would by firing the head coach, almost like either a reality check or there's something to kind of kickstart the team, motivate them a little bit, but they've dropped 3 games in a row. But during those games, Ja Morant has taken 21.7 shots per game, which is up from 17.3 per game over the course of the season. He's just had the ball in his hands more. The usage is up. The shot attempts are up. So what has that done for the team? I mean, we'll see as they continue to play more games, but that's the main thing that I've noticed here. Like I think Jaren Jackson had that 15 rebound game, and I don't think that's a direct reaction to Taylor Jenkins being gone. I think it was probably more to do with Zach Edey only playing 12 minutes that game, but I think Ja Morant having the ball in his hands more is the main impact here.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. I think what I read was that before the season, they wanted more ball movement as opposed to pick and roll. And you drafted a 7'4" center who is a pretty solid deterrent when it comes to setting screens. So, yeah, who knows what's going on down there? The timing was certainly weird. But I get on one hand, it's like if you know you're going to make a move, why waste any time? But I don't know. I'm really interested to see what happens the rest of into the playoffs. In terms of fantasy, I don't really know if there's enough time for there to be a significant impact because the guys we're kind of watching in fantasy, they're not going to get pulled from the rotation. So, if anything, it's kind of like, all right, where are they getting the ball? How much are they getting it? That kind of deal. As Noah noted, Ja's shot attempts are up. I don't know if that's because of the new interim coach or he's just decided I'm back from injury. I'm healthy. I'm going to shoot more. Who knows what's going on down there, but that's going to be an interesting situation to watch through the offseason, in terms of what they do with that staff and also the players. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. may be coming up on an extension pretty soon. So definitely be interesting to watch in Memphis.
Yeah, I picked up Zach Edey at the beginning of the week. He got into foul trouble on their first game on Monday, but yesterday was a nice little bounce back, dominated on the glass, over 15 rebounds. And if that trend continues, of him actually getting minutes, I think he does hold value the rest of the way. The Memphis Grizzlies play on Thursday, 6 games. They play on Saturday, 5 games. And a Detroit team that maybe is going to be missing Beef Stew. So I don't know. I think he's a guy that I would probably hold right now and just pray that he doesn't get into foul trouble. No, that's easier said than done. But I think there's.
I think just quick, right? I think Beef Stew is going to be back for that game because that's the third game.
Third game. Got you. Yeah. Either way, I would still hold Zach Edey for the fact that everything Noah said of like him being more of Ja Morant being more aggressive, them running more offense, getting more touches through him. That shift is clearly evident. And it's not a surprise that Ja Morant came back from his mysterious, injuries right after Taylor Jenkins was fired. So clearly something was going on there because he doesn't look like he's good.
Plus, what makes it so interesting is because the reports are that Ja Morant was frustrated with the injuries. He immediately comes back the game after Taylor Jenkins is fired. And I think it was the GM for Memphis, Zach Kleiman, if I'm not mistaken, his name, was like, no, this was all my decision. The players didn't know. Players weren't consulted. I'm like, so you're just gonna coincidentally, Ja Morant just came back the game after, and all of a sudden is getting 4 extra shots per game, and I don't know. It was
what a hamstring injury he was out with.
Yeah,
my hamstring's not. Oh, I'm good now. Let's go get bouncy.
Show us some effort to hide the narrative a little bit if that's what it was. Maybe it is just a coincidence. I don't know, but the timing of everything was wait one more game, Ja. Just one more game.
It's kind of an interesting point because as much as Ja was focused on himself and I'm not getting as many touches, the ball's moving around, others are getting more involved. That's kind of, I feel like the way that they always continue to get bounced in the playoffs is because they're so predictable. So I think it's an interesting wrinkle to see how, I don't know, we'll see if this works out, if they're going to flame out the same way that they have in the recent years. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch nonetheless.
One more thing on that. Sorry. And then we can
Yeah.
move on to something else. John Morant also just played in a back-to-back. He missed 6 games and then with a hamstring injury.
Bro,
and
he
played in a back-to-back.
Guy was sandbagging, like, get this man out of here, and then I'll come back.
I'm not playing until Taylor Jenkins is gone. And like they were like, oh, it's been 6 games now. Maybe we actually have to get
Bro, that is wild. That's honestly what it looks like to me. Like,
of course, that's all
crazy.
Speculation. So apologies if it's entirely
Sure.
incorrect. So I'm not trying to start rumors, but anyways.
Oh man. One team that's really hard to trust in the fantasy playoffs, and their schedule's been great up until this point, but the Brooklyn Nets, they play on Monday. They played on Monday. They play on Thursday, and then they play on Sunday. So those 2-day gaps in between is just really hard to hold anyone. One player that I found very frustrating got bounced out of the quarterfinals in one league that I had this guy rostered, Nic Claxton. He's shown up at times, and then other times he doesn't. Raph, are you holding him? Do you think he can hold top 100 value the rest of the season, or is it someone like based off the schedule? It's like, I don't know.
Oh, we're talking rest. We're talking rest of this season. All right.
Oh, you're talking. My bad.
I was talking next season, but I can touch on that too.
Talk on both of them because I don't know if I trust him
I think
either.
Yeah, he's been really disappointing this season. Like we've talked about this before. He's someone where in the free throw punt build, you're kind of hoping for like top 75 value, if not higher. No. Like he's been barely top 100. Like I'm sorry. Like if you punt free throw percentage and turnovers, he's barely top 100. Like that. I guess we can put some of it on the instability at the point guard position to go from Dennis Schroeder to pretty much no one for a bit, and then D'Angelo Russell has been in and out of the lineup. But it's been a really disappointing season, I think, from a fantasy standpoint for Claxton. Right after he got paid too, like it's been rough. So I don't know. I don't know if I can trust. I definitely can't trust him for the rest of this season. In terms of next season, I don't know if I'm using a top 100 pick on him just because I think there are better centers that you can get in that 60 to 75 range that can provide you more consistent value than he can in that situation.
Yeah, it's definitely he's going to be a very interesting case heading into next season. I think top 100 is definitely a conversation that needs to be had outside the top 100 this year. Blocks are down, rebounds are down, minutes are slightly down, field goal percentage is down. Mm-hmm. I think he's a very talented player that is kind of dependent on a specific roster around him that's kind of set up for him to have success. And this roster just altogether wasn't set up for any sort of success. And Jordy Fernandez had them overachieve there for a little bit, which, props to him. But like you said, like they have D'Angelo Russell at point guard, and when he's not playing, it's been like Tyrese Martin at point guard. And like Zaire Williams is on the perimeter there. Keon Johnson. So it's like nobody that I'm like, oh, okay, like that's the point guard that's going to set up Nic Claxton really well. So like the offense has been very choppy. He hasn't gotten as many blocks. Obviously, that's a big factor for his actual value. And I don't like heading into next season, unless Brooklyn lucks out in the lottery and ends up with a guy like a Dylan Harper, or they don't look out in the lottery and still end up getting a guy like a Jeremiah Fears. Even then, I'm not super optimistic heading into next season that Nic Claxton is going to bounce back. And, he was relatively available this season, even like for a team that has kind of had, especially recently, some of this like availability frustration with, like you mentioned, D'Angelo Russell in and out, Cam Johnson in and out. Claxton hasn't really been affected by that, but his minutes have been iffy and his production has been iffy. So, yeah, I think top 100 is going to be an interesting conversation here in about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to even sniff top 100 consideration next year. I mean, he was a 6th round draft pick this year, 6th round, and he's performing at a 12th round value right now. Yikes! And I think one of the biggest areas that he fell back on is his field goal percentage. This dude is usually like a 60 plus, 65, like among the league leaders. To shoot 55%, like. SGA could shoot that. like you can't have your big man shooting 55% on that.
Christian Brown higher.
Yeah, right. That was a great pull there.
But I mean, he's obviously like a anomaly from the shooting guards. Yeah, he's
But like, you know,
57, yeah.
But if
Yeah,
you're punting
that's-
him on free throws and
Mhm.
and you're punting him on points too, free throw percent, like he hurts you more than he helps you if he's not at least having a propped up field goal percentage. Like he's not you need your centers if you're just going to do a couple things really nicely to at least shoot, 60, 70% from the field. So yeah, I'm hard pressed to spend on Nic Claxton. And to your guys' points, the volatility of the point guard position, we don't know what this Brooklyn Nets team is going to look like. If we're going to do a mock draft, for next season, which I'm sure we'll probably do in the coming weeks just because we're sickos, I don't expect to see Claxton in the top 100 there. Let's talk about Zach Edey again, though, because rookie report time. And outside of maybe like Zach, I'm actually surprised, Noah, you didn't lobby for Zachary Ricochet here because he's been on a heater to end the season. And it's actually
Did we talk about him last week?
Oh, did we? Was I not here last week?
It was that the week before when you weren't here. Yeah, see, that's why I didn't include him. So I talked about him. Yeah.
Well, I'll just give some flowers to Ricochet because I think he's like the most under discussed or not talked about enough first overall pick that we've had in a long time, which is probably a good thing for him because who wants the pressure of being a number one pick? Like he's just going out there, playing his game, progressing, improving. And maybe we'll see the same thing out of Zach Edey this final stretch of the season here. Noah, where do you kind of stand and where he could be next season? Is this a guy that you think could be a top 100 player if maybe he can get the minutes and the usage involvement in the offense that we're kind of seeing in this back stretch of the season?
I think he definitely has the potential. Just looking at these last 3 games, doubles with multiple blocks when he's played at least 30 minutes. And then he had the one game where he played 12 minutes and didn't really do much. The only question to me, number one question to me, maybe there's a couple others in there, but whoever is the next head coach, like how do they feel about Zach Edey? Do they think that they can win games with Zach Edey starting at center and playing 25 to 30 minutes? And is that something that they try early on and it doesn't work and then they go away from it? Is it something that they don't do early on and then eventually get to it? I don't know. I think that's just going to be such a factor there with determining what Edey looks like next season. I think it goes back to even entering last draft. That was kind of my question: is this 7'4" big that's a monster like player out there, like the biggest guy out there every night, basically, like our team's going to be able to take advantage of that because he's not able to move as well on defense? Is feeding the post on offense almost going to like limit an offense's production at times? How involved is he going to be in pick and rolls? I mean, we know, like we were talking about earlier, like wasn't as much as maybe John Morant was expecting. So I think that's going to be a big factor here because if he's on the floor for 30 minutes, I think a double-double and multiple blocks is going to be pretty easy for him every night. But it's if he's only playing 15 to 20 minutes or it's a very inconsistent role, that's the main question mark to me. Because if he's playing 30 minutes, yeah, he's a top 100 guy easy.
Yeah, I think that's certainly fair to say. If anything, you kind of wonder if they've got too many options in the front court. Like obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be the primary guy. Beyond him, you got Santi Aldama. When healthy, Brandon Clark was getting minutes. They're even giving Jay Huff rotation minutes. So it's like if you can kind of figure out that situation, whoever's the next head coach there, that would be big for Edey's potential in terms of fantasy value and providing fantasy managers some clarity going into draft season.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the Grizzlies payroll is. Brandon Clark's going to be there till at least the next 2 seasons. Santi Aldama has a player option going into this summer, I believe, for $5.9 million. So there's a chance that he could be gone. Jay Huff is locked in for a little while. Yeah, I don't know. I could see a world where Zach Edey becomes a Vika Zubac if they actually get a good point guard to feed him the rock, like that evolution. And it took Vika Zubac a while. Like it took him getting James Harden to be the guy that he is now, a 4th round value player and one of the best values all season. I'm not saying he's going to make that leap, but I could see that being the potential. Whether that's realized in year 2, I don't know. But I would, if you have him in Dynasty, I wouldn't be trying to like sell shares or anything like that. Like I think that there is still some promise with Edey. And yeah, I don't know. You can hide a big that sometimes gets lost in playing on the perimeter. Like just play drop coverage. You figure it out. And you also have Jaren Jackson Jr. there, who's a pretty good rim protector in his own right. So yeah, I think he could be someone that I would be targeting as a late round big for rebounds, high field goal percentage, and potentially some blocks. All right, let's talk about the rest of the week, though. It is championship week for most Yahoo public leagues. What are some guys who are some guys you're picking up, Raph, to kind of end things this week? And, obviously recognizing that there are some tough slates that fit people in there, but there also are some favorable matchups that you may want to hunt on the waiver wire.
My first name would be Tari Eason. They've got 3 more games left to play this week. No back-to-backs. 47% rostered, so he's still out there in some standard leagues. Not going to be much of a scorer, but you need rebounds, defensive stats. I think he's certainly your guy there. So that's where I would start. Boston's another team, 3 games, no back-to-backs. We've already seen some of their guys ruled out for tonight's game, Wednesday's game, I should say, against the Heat. So maybe a Sam Hauser could have some streaming value for a night. Luke Cornett's another possibility. Those aren't guys I'm too excited about, but they're pretty much locked into the 2 seed. So I think if anything, they're going to prioritize making sure guys like Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford are healthy for the postseason more than anything.
I think the 2 guys that I'm really looking at, number 1 is Ryan Rollins, who is a guy that probably just needs to be rostered everywhere at this point. We don't really know when Damian Lillard's going to be back. Scored at least 20 in 2 of the last 3 games. I think 23 he had in their last game, which was a new career high. So I think he's a guy that just kind of needs to be rostered at this point. And they also have 3 games from Thursday to Sunday, including the Saturday-Sunday back-to-back. So if you're just like really trying to maximize games, you can do that. Then another player who didn't do well as a scorer last night, but was able to contribute some other value across the board. Delano Banton started at point guard for Portland. Anthony Simons was out. Scoot Henderson's in concussion protocol. They have 3 more games this week, Thursday through Sunday as well. So if Simons and Scoot remain out, which I think is kind of an if at this point, we need to kind of see about that. But they do have a back-to-back on Thursday and Friday, which I wouldn't think would affect Simons' availability with a forearm injury, but who knows? Because if they're trying to improve their lottery odds, they may make sure that Banton is starting at point guard. So could be a guy that, based on the injury report, is worth streaming.
My guys, I got Pelle Larsson on the Miami Heat.
Yeah,
I don't know that Davion Mitchell is going to be back yet. If he's not, either way, Andrew Wiggins has been ruled out. We don't know when he's coming back. On some other injuries there. So I think Pelle Larson's a guy that's been playing really well for a rookie. They got Boston tonight. Then they got Memphis on Thursday in a back-to-back. And then they also play Milwaukee Bucks on Saturday. So you can definitely start him for at least 2 or 3 of those games. Also, Adem Bona, I think, needs to be rostered in all leagues. The Sixers have Thursday and Saturday against Milwaukee and Minnesota. I don't see any of the big men. I mean, Gershon Yabusele might play, but even if he doesn't, like Bona's been a really good rebounder, filling up the stat sheet, getting a lot of stocks. So I think he's a guy that you can trust the rest of the way. Who else do I have there? I think those are the best guys that I like. We already talked about Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And then I would also say just look out on the waiver wire. Like someone might have dropped a really good player out of desperation. Obviously pick them up if it makes sense for you.
What do you think of Jacoby Walter in Toronto?
He's been playing well.
6% rostered. I think the only guy who may not miss time amongst their main players is Scotty Barnes, and that's because he's an all-star. So there are different rules for those guys, obviously. But I think Jacoby Walter is going to be someone to watch for the rest of this week. They've got 3 more games to play, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who else has 3 games the rest of the way? The Warriors have 3 games. I don't know outside of – I don't think Jonathan Kuminga is going to play much this week after landing on his tailbone. So Brandon Pajemski, still a guy you want to roster there. Maybe Moses Moody if you're desperate for some threes. I think those are the only other teams that I see the rest of the way that have 3 and 4. Warriors. Oh, Lakers do too.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith had a good game. I don't know that I would trust him to stream the rest of the way, though. Yeah, I like that call with Jacoby Walter. Toronto can't be trusted at this stage in the game. All right, let's talk about some golf because the world's top female amateurs compete on golf's sacred grounds, Augusta National Golf Club. Watch Saturday at noon Eastern on NBC, Golf Channel, and streaming on Peacock. It's the Augusta National Women's Amateur. All right, so the Pelicans announced that Zion Williamson will be missing the rest of the season with a back injury. CJ McCollum's also been ruled out for the rest of the season. Noah, looking at and considering that Zion remains a high pick almost every season, and he always ends up on the injury report or just not playing out, a handful of games throughout the year. How do you rank him this season, and how do you view him going into next season as a player? I feel like most analysts would say, I'm not touching Zion just because of the health risks. Are you of that opinion as well, or do you still see some opportunity for him to shake some of the labels that have been coming his way lately?
I think you kind of have to zig when others zag. So if everybody else is really against drafting Zion, you can probably get him at pretty good value heading into next season. I think he played really, really well when he was on the floor, some of the best basketball of his career, but obviously availability remains a pretty big issue for him. I think the question that we need answered is, what does New Orleans look like next season? We need to figure that out before we can talk about anybody on that roster. Are they going to trade CJ McCollum, who is going to be 34 by the time next season starts? Do they think that they can win next year with just everybody back and healthy? Do they try and look at trading Zion because he played really well? And then I'm not really too concerned about this back injury. That's obviously just them trying to improve their lottery odds. I don't think that's something we need to worry about. So is Zion in New Orleans next year? What does the rest of the roster look like? I just think there's a lot of questions right now. I was encouraged by his finish to the season, but he does seem like a player that, is just going to have some random injury pop up. So if he has a healthy season, he's going to be a steal no matter where he's drafted. But I think that's just kind of been the risk the last, as long as he's been in the league, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like someone who'd be like a top 75 pick at best under normal circumstances. If you can wait a little longer, you certainly do that. There's no way I think you can use a top 50 pick on him, even an 8-cat where you're punting, turnovers. If you want to punt free throw percentage, even with that, I don't think you can do it just because of the availability concerns. 30 games played this year. I think he's hit 70 once in his career. So it's like the risk outweighs the reward, especially if you're picking him 4th or 5th round, because that could very well, for me personally, that's usually the round where I like to take a risk, but that can torpedo your entire fantasy season. If you draft a player like that, gives you good value when he's on the court, but he's not guaranteed to be on the court half the season. So, yeah.
His ADP on Yahoo this year was 46.7. So top 50 right there. That's a tough L for a guy. 30 games. I'm really curious when we start doing this offseason mocking. I'm curious to see where Joel Embiid and Zion. They're probably the two guys that I'm like, I don't think people are going to draft them in the top 50 just because it just doesn't make sense to do it. You might as well go I think Mikal Bridges had a worse ADP than him. Let me see. Let me confirm that.
You wouldn't take Embiid top 50?
No. His knee is a wrap. He's done.
Yeah, Bridges 54.
He's going to play. Oh, so yeah, Bridges was 50. Yeah, 54. So I'd rather have Mikal Bridges. You're going to get, not only do you get the minutes, but you get this dude's going to play 65 plus games easy. Probably 70.
It just kind of gets into almost like a drafting philosophy thing, because would you rather have every game of Mikal Bridges versus
take the high floor
55 games of Embiid?
55?
Are we that's the thing, though.
Of Embiid?
That's the problem.
maybe. Best case.
No, dude. So how many games did Kawhi Leonard play this year? And he looks great right now, by the way.
Yeah, I'm pulling up Embiid. He played 39 last year, 19 this year.
Gross.
He's got 2 seasons over 65 games.
And one of those was the MVP year.
Yeah, like you can argue he might not be eligible for another postseason award. And it's like that's wild to even consider.
Maybe in a roto format, you'd be looking at drafting Embiid higher just because you get, I guess, would get the value of every single game, even if he only plays 40 games. Just outside top 50 just seems crazy for a guy that was top 2 conversation 2 seasons ago and was top 10 conversation this year. And I think a lot of people were like, I don't know if I want to take Embiid first round. Like if it gets to late first round, I kind of feel obligated to because of the talent, but I don't feel good about it. And everybody did get screwed this year by it. So top 50 is just such a massive drop for such a talented player. It's just hard to wrap my head around.
I think if they're going to preserve, like if it's still about winning a championship, why would you play him more than what Kawhi played? Kawhi's played 31 games this year.
Yeah.
But at this point, he looks like the best version of himself that we've seen since the last time he got hurt in the playoffs. So if I'm the Sixers, like, why would you there's your example.
Just don't play him before the All-Star break.
Right. So then would you pay a top 50 price for someone that's not going to play for the All-Star break?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to.
The other thing with Embiid, we still don't know what their treatment plan is.
Right.
He hasn't even gotten surgery yet.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right.
Like if he has to get surgery, I think it's pretty much going to take him off of most draft boards going into the next season. Because they're not going to rush that process, that recovery process. Given the issue he's had.
I'll take my late round flyer on Joel Embiid, stick him in an IL spot. And
it's gonna.
When he plays in March next year, you guys watch out. He's gonna be a league winner. Who's the waiver wire pickup of the year? Oh, it was Joel Embiid, that guy that went on the draft. It's crazy.
The funny thing is that he's still going to be a top 50 pick. I just don't think I'm going to be the one that's picking.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and LaMelo Ball, I think it's a similar conversation because when he plays, he's right around that second round value. But then, when it gets late in the season, the dude doesn't play basketball. It's not to the level of Jeremy Grant, but it's getting damn close to it. How many games did he play this year? 47.
How many games did he play in April? It's been I looked it up because I saw someone I think it was Underdog and tweeted that it had been like 4 years in a row that Jeremy Grant didn't play a game in April.
Yeah.
I looked back for the last time he played a game in April. It was the 2020-2021 season that started in December and went until May. Was the last time Jeremy Grant played in April, which to his credit, he played a game in May that season, but still didn't play the last couple of weeks. So it's like
that's a nice subtle finesse by him. That his season's essentially over 2 months before everyone else's.
But I feel like people if the stat is coming out that, hey, this guy hasn't played in April in 4 years, you almost have to kind of change that narrative. Like, let me suit up once or twice this April, just play a little basketball. Yeah. That way it's not like hey, this guy doesn't want to play or doesn't have, I don't know. It's also the doubtful out thing that they've done. I know they for sure did it last year because I remember getting frustrated by it last year, and they're doing it again this year. So it's like, again, just cover up the narrative a little bit better. Be a little smarter, guys. Let's just.
I think we all collectively agree that we're not drafting Jeremy Grant on any of our teams because now we
I think we're having
welcome to the bandwagon. I've been there for 3 years.
I don't think I've ever drafted him on a team, but it wasn't because of the April March thing. He's just empty calorie stack kind of guy.
4 rebounds a game.
Right.
I have him in a stupid dynasty league, and I need to get rid of him.
Yeah, you might as well just drop him at this point.
Can't do that.
No, you can't.
But you're right. But I can't. Yeah.
But LaMelo Ball, though, rookie season 51 games, All-Star year he played 75, and then it's been 36, 22, 47. Yeah, I thought he was a value this year because you could get him in the second round. But I don't know, man. Have you guys had it? Like, are we? Do you think he's more of like a third, fourth round guy? Because you got to factor in the risk there.
I'd be more willing to roll the dice on him if he shot better than 40.5% from the field. Like, I don't know if you can. You can't afford that hit in like the second or even the third round when you also have availability concerns, at least for me. So I wouldn't use a top 50 pick on him, but I can certainly see why some people would, just because of the high volume. But I think at times that high volume is exactly why he can be a liability in terms of fantasy value too.
Kind of want to see what the Charlotte team looks like next year. Say they luck out in the lottery and get Cooper Flag. Now you have a starting lineup of potentially
Pray for that,
LaMelo.
Duh.
Well, yeah.
It's like the worst
first of all,
situation you could go to.
Not going to call for anybody's job. No, it'd be great. It'd be only 2 hours for me. I could go watch the games. It'd be great. But LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Cooper Flag, Mark Williams. Obviously, a lot of health concerns there. But you have this, talented enough team. Maybe you make a couple free agent acquisitions, kind of do what Detroit did this year. Like a couple guys that are like under the radar signings that actually really help your team. Does the fact that maybe they're a more competitive team next year kind of influence LaMelo's availability, if that makes sense? I think everybody would be able to catch on to what I'm saying. But if they're in competition for a play-in spot, does LaMelo play 60 games? So, I think that could be a factor there. And I probably want to see how they approach this offseason, because LaMelo played in every game until late November, and then a couple injuries started hitting, and he was out for like little periods at a time. So I don't know. I think probably third round is where I'd feel pretty comfortable taking him. I don't think I'd let him go outside the top 50 in my draft. I just wouldn't do it. I feel better about LaMelo than Joel Embiid.
Way better. I think I would I'm good with LaMelo in the third, because if you pair him to kind of counteract some, or to lean into some of Raph's concerns about the field goal percentage, I think you could actually pair him with like a Fred VanVleet in the fourth.
A Trae Young.
Yeah. Like that would actually be a really
bigs,
good. But yeah, but you can get bigs later. Like that was my philosophy for much of this year, was like I leaned in on all of the, like James Harden. He didn't shoot good field goal percentage this year, but he happened to be like a winning asset on a lot of my teams because I was leaned into those guards that
Harden,
pretty much
Trae,
do everything else
Fred
but
VanVleet.
shoot.
That's a start.
Yeah, I don't know. You could make a nice little 3-4 guard build and then go big heavy rounds 5 through whatever. But yeah, I think the injury concerns aren't going away, considering especially that I think it's alarming that it's his ankle again that they cited in the reason that he shut it down. So I don't know. We'll see how it go. One of the teams that's been super frustrating offensively has been the Orlando Magic. I think their season's pretty much gone the wrong direction ever since Jalen Suggs has been out. I think that guy does a lot more for that team than people realize in terms of like their defense, and then just they're just missing something. And I don't know if this is a Jamal Mosley issue or whether this is just like we got nothing outside of Paolo and Franz from a shot creation standpoint. But Suggs was a good fantasy asset for most of the year that he was healthy. Do you foresee him being this good next year, Raph?
I think he can be. I don't think top 100 is too high of a threshold for him to clear, personally. Just has to stay healthy. And I think this point of attack defense is what's really been missing, because Corey Joseph's a solid defender, but I think we can all agree that he's got more years behind him than ahead of him in terms of his NBA career. Cole Anthony is the ultimate wild card. Like, some games he'll be on from the field, others it's just absolutely brutal in terms of the shot selection and accuracy. So I think that's been huge, not having him on the court. I think he can be a top 100 player again next season. Just all about staying healthy and making sure he gets the games in that fantasy managers are going to need from him.
Yeah, I was looking back. His Yahoo ADP was 102. Jalen Suggs was. I think taking him in round 7 or 8 is fine. Kind of knowing that a lot of his value is going to come from the steals, kind of leaning into that build a little bit. I don't really see him making too many massive statistical strides next season, because the offense is still going to run through Paolo and Franz. But I thought he played really well this year. Definitely a guy I'm excited to see back out on the floor. And yeah, these injuries stink.
I wonder, do you think it's a style of play that eventually got him hurt? Like he plays pretty with like reckless abandon pretty much. Like he's diving everywhere. Like he mixes it up with the bigs. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be some point of where like, all right, I probably need to dial it back a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe that's what makes him go.
Right.
But he definitely had a multitude of injuries this year. But at that draft cost, like I think he's one of those guys that, people might forget because he was missing the end of the season. And it's like, no, this guy was a very productive fantasy player for most of the year. So yeah, I think he have no issue clearing top 100. It's just a matter of where you would get him. Final four. Any thoughts there, Noah?
I think it's going to be really exciting to see a lot of these Duke guys that have a chance to go top 10, with obviously Cooper Flag basically being a lock to go number 1. Will Cooper Flag be the second freshman to win a national championship and then be drafted first overall and join Anthony Davis in that? We saw how Anthony Davis's career has turned out, so be a pretty good sign if Flag can do that.
Yeah, I think in terms of fantasy, I think Duke's going to be the team to watch for obvious reasons. You got obviously Cooper Flag, Con Knipple, Kaman Malawach. Those three are all going to be lottery picks. We'll see what happens with Tyrese Proctor. You know, he kind of tailed off a bit last weekend, but he's also been good. One other player I'd watch is the freshman point guard out from Auburn, Tahad Pettiford. I really liked his explosiveness off the bench. So he's someone I would watch. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of the draft for him, but he's another one of those young guys who I think is going to be an exciting player. Sticks around in college for another year, gets to start and run the show. Who knows what he could be in in terms of the 2026 draft. So he'd be another guy I'd watch. Florida, Houston, I think those are both older teams in terms of their best players. So there may not be as much dynasty-related buzz for like a Walter Clayton Jr. or even an LJ Cryer at Houston.
Yeah, we're Pettiford. Yeah, I was trying to think of a comp for him, and like I think because he's a lefty, I think most people are thinking like, Brandon Jennings types. But I kind of get a little Nick Van Exel vibes from him. Like I see him being as like he could be a point guard, and I think if he stays, he can maybe develop more of that point guard. Because right now he's a bucket and super explosive, crazy nice smooth handle. But I also could see like a Mike Conley type, maybe if he stays. But it's going to be really interesting to see what players that get their draft grades coming out of the tournament, if they're seeing like a second rounder, like maybe they just go back and make more NIL money. So it's going to be a really interesting landscape. But Noah, what's your prediction? Who do you have going to the championship game and winning it all?
The matchups again. It's Duke again. Who's Duke playing? Is it Duke?
They're playing Houston. Right? Yes.
Okay. Florida was my original national champion with my main bracket. I guess I'll just stick with it. I don't know. I'll do Florida over Duke. No, I'll do Duke over Florida. I'll do Duke over Florida.
Yeah, I had Florida beating Houston in my bracket, so I'm just gonna stick with that.
A chalky bracket. Come on, right?
Hey man, I said my bracket was gonna go to hell, and it pretty much did because of the East region. So you have to pick an upset in order to have any chance of winning money. I had Duke losing in the Sweet 16, and that did not pan out. So, I'm going to stick with Florida.
I had Duke losing to Bama, but didn't go that way. So, I'll stick with Florida. I had Florida over Bama in my national championship. So, I'm going to stick with Florida. Although I do think, I don't know, man, it's going to be hard to stop Duke. But also Auburn is also very interesting to me. Like, they're just a scrappy team and old as hell. So, like, I feel like some, being adults, 24 years old going up against 18-year-olds, like
their starting lineup is like average age is like 24, and the Hawks average age is 22. Yeah, and I'm sure the Hawks aren't the youngest starting lineup in the NBA, so I'm sure there's a number.
Yeah, I think the Thunder are still younger than them.
Probably.
Crazy. All right, well, that will do it for the Rotoworld Basketball Show. We'll see you next week. Final episode of the season. Good luck in all your fantasy championships. If you're still playing, if this is your semifinals, I don't know how the hell you do it, but best of luck to you. We'll see you next week. For Dan Titus, Raphielle Johnson, and Noah Rubin, we out.